Welcome to Westchester Jewish Community Services. As a leading agency in providing a comprehensive spectrum of human services, we have been helping people since 1943. We serve all people in Westchester County, regardless of age, income, or ethnicity. We provide a wide variety of essential and dynamic services that make a difference in people's lives. Children, teens, adults, and senior citizens are served by our network of programs located throughout the county. When people come to us for assistance, they become part of the WJCS family. Our highly trained and skilled staff focus on you and your family and are committed to becoming your partner in finding solutions. For more than half a century, we have been connecting people to services that help them overcome mental, physical, or emotional challenges. WJCS is here in your community when you need us.
Welcome to the Ways We Care of Westchester Jewish Community Services. I'm Dale Wang, Director of Community Relations. WJCS is funded by UJA Federation, United Way, government grants, private individuals, foundations, and corporations. When people confront difficult life situations, they often do not know where to turn for help. Despite all the self-help manuals, ads in local libraries, notices in the papers, human nature avoids dealing with the complicated and emotional issues of life until they strike personally at one's heart and one's home. For 25 years, WJCS has been offering bereavement counseling individually and in groups for those who have lost loved ones, spouses, parents, siblings, friends, and children. In the past 2 years, the agency has begun a program to help people who are facing terminal illness, either themselves or as a family member. And recently, we have created plans for and initial offerings of a healing center to provide spiritual and emotional support when individuals face personal challenges and seek solace in the Jewish tradition. Tonight's program will explore the ways in which the end-of-life care services and bereavement counseling help those who confront the most difficult of life's transitions. And we will look at some additional opportunities that may help people find comfort and support. To help us in this discussion, we will be speaking with Sherry Birnbaum, who is the director of the End-of-Life Care and Bereavement Center. Welcome, Sherry. We have Sonia Rosenbaum, who is a former member of one of our bereavement groups. Welcome, Sonia. And Lily Singer, who is the coordinator of the Bereavement Center. Lily, welcome. Sherry, until a few years ago, no one really spoke of end-of-life care. We always had the bereavement program, but what has evolved to create this type of care, and what made it necessary to offer services in this way?
Well, the most simplistic answer is that the population is aging. More of us are reaching the age and living longer, and as we live longer, we have more of an opportunity to face some of life's crises, like getting ill or having a life-threatening illness. And it became apparent that people need to do some planning, because very often it's left for a crisis situation when a family is called in and a diagnosis is given, or people gather around a bed in a hospital. That's not exactly the right time to make these decisions, because very often a family needs to sit and talk about their values, about things that are important to them, like quality of life, and these things should be discussed before so that families are ready to put a plan into action as needed.
Mm-hmm. Now, this project was initially funded by UJA Federation through a study that we had done. And was there an impetus for that? How did it come about?
Well, UJA had a group of young investors who were looking to do something philanthropic, and they asked for us to submit a paper. And based on the needs that we thought were out there, we submitted a paper saying that we thought we should develop an end-of-life care center. And the concept was that with one call to WJCS, they would be put in touch with a social worker who could do an assessment, who could meet with the family, assess needs, find out exactly what was needed, and this could be from anywhere from counseling to a referral to a lawyer, for financial needs, for home health aides, for counseling for children, all kinds of things. And once the plan was put in place, we could help that family and support them throughout the illness. And UJ thought that this was a very good idea and decided to put the money up for that.
Mm-hmm. Now, who refers people? How do they know about it? And at what point in a family's problem do they seek this kind of relief?
Well, actually, we have gotten calls almost from the doctor's office from the minute of diagnosis, and we do get calls from rabbis. We've gotten calls from churches and other religious organizations. We've gotten calls from home health organizations as well. Very often it comes from family members, somebody who's looking to help and support family members. We get involved right away, and we come in, as I said, we go to the house, we meet with the family and try to help from the very beginning and stay with the family throughout the illness.
Mm-hmm. Now, how would this differ from what people feel is hospice care? Do you work with hospice care? Is it complementary to hospice care? How does it?
We do.
How does it work?
Hospice care is usually indicated when the illness is at the very terminal stages, and it's at the last 6 months of life. We can come in as with an illness that may diabetes, kidney illness. It could be a very long-term illness, and so we're there from the very beginning. And if a patient needs to go into hospice care, we can still work with them and provide some services that hospice care doesn't provide, like some kinds of counseling, home health aides we have. So we can work with providing complementary services as well. And because we already have a long-term relationship with the family, they're often very happy to have us stay on board.
Mm-hmm. So in a sense, we're really helping deal with the whole person. It is not just the medical aspects and the kind of support that a hospice situation would provide.
That's true, Dale. And not only are we dealing with the whole person, we're dealing with the whole family and the whole support system, because we really have to look at who in the community is providing services as well. Sometimes it's friends, sometimes it's people from a congregation that are also providing services, and we can be advisors to and supports to them as well.
Mm-hmm. When you mentioned things like diabetes and I guess even certain forms of cancer, it's not necessarily terminal illnesses. These are life-threatening
Mm-hmm.
illnesses.
Mm-hmm.
So you could conceivably be working with someone on a longer-term basis.
Absolutely.
And not at the emergency situation
Right.
at the end of life. These are very complicated decisions. How do you help somebody consider what is the right medical, legal, spiritual road to follow?
Well, certainly it's not our job to help with medical decisions and what kinds of treatments, because I'm not a medical person and no one on my staff really is. But in terms of helping people sort out the issues, we can make referrals to people who do have the answers, like financial people, like lawyers. But in terms of things like quality of life issues, what does independence mean? What would be satisfactory for a family in terms of the quality of someone's life? Would a person choose to be at home? Would a person choose to be in a nursing home? Is there support in the family to provide care in the home so that that family member could be there? Are the young children? Who's taking care of those children? These are the kinds of questions that we sit and we talk about with a family so that they can then make the kinds of decisions that they need to make for themselves.
Mm-hmm. You had also mentioned that you encourage people to develop ethical wills and health care plans. Obviously, these kinds of things should be done earlier in
Right.
one's life situations, regardless of whether or not they're facing terminal illness. How do you help families to think about that before an emergency occurs?
Well, what we've been doing now is we've been trying to get out into the community and educate people. We've been trying to provide presentations where we tell them about healthcare proxies, living wills. We try to educate them as to what they can and they can't do, and to stimulate a dialogue between the generations, because very often, as you mentioned in your beginning, that it's a difficult topic for families to talk about. It's almost a superstition that if we talk about it, something bad might happen. And we're trying to break through that and encourage people to talk about it and become more comfortable with that kind of dialogue, so that it is not whispered about at the hospital bed, people are not walking outside, but that the patient and the family can dialogue together and work together more comprehensively.
And obviously, even people in middle age, whether or not they're facing these types of situations, should be thinking about this, because it's never too early to think about an ethical will or a life proxy.
Absolutely.
Yes. Well, obviously, dealing with terminal illness results usually in the death of a loved one and the beginning of a mourning process. And I'd like to just shift a little to talk about the bereavement services. Lily, you were one of the originators, if not the originator, of our agency's services in bereavement counseling. What is the nature of bereavement counseling, and who comes for those services?
Even people who have a lot of support in the families will come and avail themselves of a group of people who are going through the same similar pain, bereavement, adjustment. Parents with children, widows and widowers mostly. Occasionally there is an adult child who lost a parent or a sister. And we have also a group of parents who lost adult children, which is another devastating loss. So we announce the types of groups we have, and then we wait, and we usually get the calls. And occasionally we get enough calls for one kind of service, and then we form a group.
So it can really be at any type of loss, and you create the groups as the needs arise.
We also have a group for people whose family or friends committed suicide. That's a very specific kind of a loss.
Right.
So we try to serve all kinds of people.
And is there still a group for children who've lost, young children who've lost parents?
Right now we don't have a group for children. We have had it for years.
Right.
Little children and up to teenagers, up to age 18.
Okay, what would you think, I know you do both individual and group counseling. What are the advantages of one form of support over the other?
Well, a group is a very powerful medium. Group is very helpful. There are several people there. They can form a union, they can form a camaraderie, and they can support each other. They can test out with each other what each is doing and how it's working. Then people who have other problems that are very deep-seated, of long-standing, and they don't necessarily want to bring that into a bereavement group. Then it's advisable to have some individual counseling. And it can go hand in hand.
There's probably a process that most people go through when they're mourning. Can you describe what that type of process might be?
Might be is a good question. It's not uniform. I mean, most people, you will hear them say when somebody announces them to them, so-and-so died. Most people will answer, oh no, don't tell me. And how is the first reaction is usually denial, wanting to get away from that. And that's pretty universal. Even when you expect somebody to die, the reaction is still, oh no. After that, there's a whole gamut of feelings and reactions which come both sequentially as well as randomly, or together. All together. You can be angry and sad, you can be feeling lost and depressed, you can have all these feelings bombarding you at the same time, and that's very unnerving. It's very unnerving when people can't sleep, they can't find things, they don't remember things, and they feel very, very much alone, bereft.
You had mentioned when we were talking earlier in the week that it's important for people to, when they're going through the process of grieving, to relive their life until it becomes a memory. I thought that that was very beautiful. And how do you help people do that?
Well, many people avoid thinking about the deceased because it's painful. But when you do, you relive certain vignettes, certain parts of your life, and that's part of the bereavement process. In order to finish the mourning process, you really have to look at your life with that person, what you meant to each other, what you went through together. Not just the good things, but the bad things, the things that made you feel impatient and angry and happy and safe, and all of these. And only after you've looked at them and sort of redigested them, you can put them aside. Not forget them, but put them aside. They're available to you, but they've been sort of worked through. The issues have been worked through, and you can always look at them again, but it's not that painful the second or third or fifth time around. But that's part of the grieving process.
So you help people cope with those memories as they go through them.
Because so many people find it so painful that they become hyperactive, they get very, very busy, they'll do anything except really mourn and grieve. They try to get away from it.
Are there differences between how people cope with the loss of a parent, the loss of a spouse, or the loss of a child?
Oh yes, very much so. It's totally different. A loss of a parent is almost unavoidable. All of us either have lost or will lose parents. A loss of a child is the worst thing that can happen to anybody. I hate to compare losses. I hate to compare miseries, but losing a child is just about the worst loss. But losing a spouse is the loss of a presence. It's your present life. It's the last person you talk to at night, the first person you talk to in the morning. Your present life is shattered. So you can cope better with the loss of a parent. That's your past. And it's expected. It's how the world works. But a loss of a child is totally unacceptable.
I know it must be devastating. To try to help people go on beyond that loss.
It's terrible.
We have the opportunity tonight to speak to Sonia, who has been in one of the groups and has had the advantage of working with Lily, who I know from so many people. She has a way of helping people to move beyond loss, which is the title of her book and her new edition. But tell me, Sonia, what prompted you to join this group and to begin to share your thoughts with other people?
Oh, a blessing indeed. At the funeral parlor, one of my kids picked up a brochure of Sherry and the other services with a widow-to-widow support, and I resisted for weeks and weeks, and eventually they kept asking, when are you calling? And I finally said, okay, and I called, and I was fortunate to have the support of a very, very lovely human being, a widow who had widowed 5 years before, and we spoke on the phone very often for a number of weeks, a couple of months, and one day she said to me, I think you might be ready to go to a group. And I said, really? I'm not interested in that. I don't do that sort of thing. It's usually everyone's reaction. And she said, try it. It's only, you can't lose. Just try it. You don't have to keep going. See what you think. And it was a very, very amazing experience, because when you first lose a spouse, my husband had a 9-week illness. It was very, very sudden. I had suffered the loss of both parents and a brother 9 months before as well, my brother. So everything was very fresh, and the pain was there for lots of reasons. But the devastation of losing a spouse was great. It was an open wound. It was bleeding, and you had to find some way to stop the bleeding. It was like a physical pain. And that night, it was 5 months after my husband had died that I came to the first session. A widower came that night for the first time. His wife had died a week and a half before. And it was very powerful to be able to be the one to hand over the tissues and not reach for it myself.
Right.
It was the beginning of very close and personal relationships with other people who had been through it. No matter how much love you have in your family and your friends, people don't know what to do about you. All of a sudden, you're the one that has suffered a loss of a spouse. They don't know how to react. Some say, surely that she doesn't want to talk about him. Well, all I wanted to do was talk incessantly about him. Everybody's reaction is different, but here in this context, you're all feeling similar things, different stories, but still feeling and drawing from each other's experience.
And whatever you did or you said or you felt was shared among the other people had similar kinds of experiences, similar feelings.
Indeed. And even if they were different, there was enough similarity in the fact that here we were without a spouse and alone in a new, very profound way, that it didn't matter that we didn't have the same kinds of relationships with our deceased spouses. That there was something there that really bound us together as a group, and some more than others. And I'm still very close with some of the people in that group, even though it's been 2 years now.
Lily, you had mentioned that people sometimes learn how to be in the role of a bereaved person. And I wondered why you needed to learn to be in that role. What is it about being a person in mourning that requires certain responses, or does it require something of the person, or you need to expect what society is going to expect of you?
Would you like to answer?
Oh, I bow to you.
Well, I think if you're going to wait for society to draw your identity for you, you may be very disappointed, and you may be in the wrong person altogether. No, the unfortunate thing is that when you have to do all these things, learn to live alone and cope alone and do the work of two people, you suddenly also have to reinvent yourself. You have to teach your friends and your coworkers who you are. There's a tremendous need for personal growth, because I think the tendency is to crawl back into bed and cry, or put your head on somebody else's shoulder and have somebody say, "Oh, you poor thing, let me take you out for dinner." But that's not going to solve anything, because that personal growth has to take place. And that personal growth has to go beyond and above the point where you were before you lost your spouse. If you just go back to the former level of functioning, you're not going to be able to survive. You need the other person. You've got to get stronger and know yourself better so you can really survive on your own.
Sonia, you had mentioned, and we just have a couple of minutes left, that you were an independent woman, that you were in business, that you knew how to do your checkbook, but yet you still felt this tremendous loss when your husband passed away. How do you get beyond that? How do you see yourself in a different way as independent?
I think one thing you try to do is you try to learn from what he would have done, try to remember what would he have done in this situation. And if you've spent a lot of years together, there will often be that to draw on. Others, just reading, learning, talking, getting the support from others around you who are going through that. who will say, I remember a person came to the group and Lily said, "How are you doing?" And he said, "Oh, I'm just fine, nothing's wrong." And then we started asking, "Well, what did you do last night when you came home from work?" I turned on the television immediately and the radio, and I just, total denial and not any ability to deal with it. And I think it just depends so much on the individual and your own history, your past with that person. But somehow you have to become yourself, as Lily says, and learn who you are. It's a self-recognition of who am I as a person now.
Invoking the person's presence, what would my spouse have done in this situation, is a wonderful coping mechanism, because it's keeping the memory of the spouse alive, and it's also giving you a chance to make a decision. Am I going to do it the way my spouse would have done it, or now that I'm alone, is there another way that I should do this that will be more helpful? So it's a wonderful process.
Sonia, I have 1 minute left for you, and I was just wondering how you knew it was time to graduate from your group.
And indeed, we called it graduation. Part of it was the process that the other people who had come about the same time that I had started were also leaving. And the other part was that people were coming in with their fresh hurt and pain and anguish. And some of us thought that, it was time for us to get to the next level in our own healing. And while we would like to, help the people who are just starting out, we weren't at that place there anymore. And you just feel that it's right. Of course, Miss Lily and everyone else, but it feels right. You learn to become selfish and do what is right for you.
Right. Well, you have grown and changed, and even though the process of the group allows people to interact at different stages, once you're beyond that, it's healthy and time to go on. So good for you. Lily, I want to get a couple of minutes. I have a minute and a half left. I want to hear about your book, the second edition of Beyond Loss, and why you're coming out with it at this time.
Good question. I don't even know. Actually, well, the first edition is out of print. It was a hardcover. And we felt that it was time to reissue it in paperback and reach another population. This is 14 years later. And I've had very good feedback on the book, that it was helpful and it's up to date. So
And it's really a guide that helps people go through the process of grieving.
That's right.
Through the transitions.
Also normalizing certain feelings and certain stages and certain things that go on. I mean, for people who are not in group, who are not in individual therapy, that's who it's for.
Well, congratulations
Thank
on
you.
the second edition. We will be, people who are interested can get in touch with you to buy the book. You want to give them your telephone number?
It's 914-949-7699, extension 366.
Okay, well, we hope that people will be calling you, and I know that it's in local bookstores, and hopefully they'll be getting that there. I want to thank you all three, and Sherry's going to be joining us in the second session when we go on to talk about a healing center that WJCS is opening. So thank you again for your insights, and we're sure that this will help people who are experiencing losses in their own lives. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Ways We Care of Westchester Jewish Community Services. I'm Dale Wang, Director of Community Relations. WJCS is funded by UJA Federation, United Way, government grants, private individuals, foundations, and corporations. We've been talking tonight about helping people cope with and adjust to challenging life situations, such as terminal illness and the death of a loved one. WJCS has offered bereavement services to families for many years, enabling people who have experienced loss to gain strength and support from others who understand their pain and the issues they face. More recently, the agency, with funding from UJA Federation, has begun end-of-life care services, assisting individuals and families who are dealing with critical and life-threatening illnesses that require practical planning and emotional support. Several of these services and a new addition that we are about to introduce have their roots in the agency's Jewish programming initiatives. With funds from UJA Federation or private philanthropic foundations, WJCS has been examining needs within Westchester's Jewish community and responding with a range of programs. We have with us some experts from our agency tonight to talk about some of these services, and I'd like to introduce to you Sherry Birnbaum, who is the Director of the End-of-Life Care and Bereavement Services. Welcome, Sherry. And Ann Yerman, who is our Director of Jewish Program Development. Welcome, Ann. And Roberta Robinson, who is Coordinator of Grant Development. Welcome. We've talked a little bit in the first half about the End-of-Life Care and Bereavement Center and how it came about, but I'd like to review because we have some viewers who don't see us in the first half. So maybe, Sherry, you can give a little overview of what the center is designed for, and maybe you and Ann can talk about how it came about.
Okay. Originally, since 1977, actually, the Bereavement Center met with families, individuals, to deal with bereavement issues. So after there was the death of a loved one, they might come to us to participate in one of our programs, to meet other people who were also going through bereavement, to sit with some of our counselors, and to sometimes go through therapy over the death of a loved one if it was a very complicated loss. As a result of the far-reaching services that we had and the satisfaction that people had with coming into our agency and being part of our program, we saw that there was a real need to reach out to families, and we created the End-of-Life Care Center to reach families prior to the death of a loved one, to establish a relationship to support people who were going through a life-threatening illness. And we started this about a year ago, and we had a grant from UJA to start the End-of-Life Care Center, which became part of the Bereavement Center. And what we do is we get families recommended to us. Either they come through their doctors, they come through the synagogues, they come through other healthcare workers, they might come through word of mouth. And as a result of being referred to us, we are there from the very beginning. And with one telephone call, they establish a relationship with an agency that has a broad amount of services, from home health care aides to psychiatrists, psychologists. We can refer them to lawyers, we can refer them to financial planners, we can refer them to bioethicists to help them make very difficult decisions, like what kinds of care may be given to a patient to sustain their life. And we believe that in creating a relationship with a family or an individual who's going through this, we can support them and we can help them make these very difficult decisions as they go through the stages of their illness.
Mm-hmm. And why was UJA Federation interested in this kind of project?
Well, part of the Jewish programming department is to work with rabbis, synagogues, UJA Federation, and Jewish institutions in Westchester County to identify unmet needs. And sitting around, UJA Federation has task forces to examine different issues. One task force is an end-of-life care task force. And one of the issues that they examined and found out is that when people have a loved one that's been diagnosed with a terminal illness, they don't know where to go. They're up against a wall. You know, you think you have all these connections in the community and you think you know people that you can call, but when this affects you, you just don't know where to go. Mm-hmm. And they had, I know Sherry mentioned this in the first half hour, there was a young group of philanthropists through UJA Federation who wanted to give funding to what they called something that was out of the box. And we sat around brainstorming, and what came about was, wow, we have a bereavement center, we have home health care services in our agency, we have social workers, we have case managers. We can do great things. We can have someone call our agency, make one phone call, and wow, somebody will come in, assess your needs, and fix you up with everyone you need. And that you have this one person that you can call, and they will keep taking care of these needs for you. And as Sherry said, she's the director of this program, and it has really taken off. We're now in our second year of funding, and it's very, very exciting.
Now, you have expanded services. This is for just Jewish clientele or for anyone in the community?
It's funded by UJA Federation, and obviously the Jewish Programming Department reaches out into the Jewish community. But our programs are open to anyone who would call. We would be so welcoming and so happy to have them, you know, be part of this program if they need our services.
When you mentioned the range of services, I just wanted to add a couple because we did have Sonia in the first segment had spoken about the widow-to-widow telephone networks, and we hadn't really had a chance to explore that. There are auxiliary, complementary services. That's a telephone connection. We also have respite care, so there are plenty of different opportunities to put all these supports in a home or in place for people.
It really is a comprehensive program, Dale, and that's one of the wonderful things about, as Ann said, the one phone call, because people, unless you've had to deal with things like where do I get durable hospital goods, how do I find out about getting a respite worker who might come in, is there support for the caregivers? We can provide all of that information, and with one phone call and one connection to WJCS, you can have all those things right at your fingertip through the services that we provide.
Now, I know that over the past couple of years we have expanded the Jewish programming services, and that we really started the expansion with putting some of these bereavement services into synagogues. Can you talk a little bit about how that process got started?
That's also very exciting because we had one rabbi approach us, and the president of the synagogue, asking us if we could send a social worker to the synagogue. And we said, absolutely, we could do this. We would be very excited to do this. And he said he would like it because, first of all, he's just getting so many, phone calls, and there are so many congregants who need some kind of help. And he's overwhelmed by it, and some of it is just some serious things that they really need professional mental health professionals. We started at this one synagogue, and Sherry was the social worker that was sent there, and she was just terrific. And it's expanded that we're now in, at the moment, between 8 and 12 synagogues, and it's expanding even further. We're going into JCCs in Westchester as well, where we could provide, and into the schools, and especially since September 11th, we've gotten many, many more requests for help, and that's ongoing.
So it's not just when you talked about schools, it may be Jewish day schools, but your bereavement services and that kind of support has also reached out to corporations and to other segments of the community.
Yeah, we get calls all the time, Dale, from schools when there's a death, whether it be of a student or whether it be of a staff person, and we're asked, can you send someone in to provide some support and some training for the staff or for the children to support the children who may be grieving. And we do that, and we do that in corporations as well. We'll go just about anywhere to help and support any group that needs it. In the synagogues, especially because I was the first worker to go in and the program has grown, and that's really satisfying to me. Very often the synagogue is seen as the spiritual home from birth to death. And so it's where people feel comfortable, and I guess it's probably very similar to a church congregation as well. People feel very comfortable to be amongst their own, and so not to be in a formal setting like a mental health agency, but to be in the synagogue for people to come in and talk about their losses with a professional, and to be amongst their peers is a very comforting and very nice thing to do, and it's really been very well received.
And these programs are open not only to the congregants of each specific synagogue, but to the community at large as well.
So they're based in the synagogue, and to an extent, it's an extension of what WJCS has done throughout the county of putting in community-based services to enable people to access our programs more easily.
And it's something that's close by, and as Sherry said, it's your home, it's your spiritual home.
We have taken this the next step with thoughts about a healing center. And I think that people are a little bit vague about what a healing center is, but I know, Roberta, you have developed a definition.
Can I just say one thing?
Oh, yes.
Interrupting. None of these programs come about without someone writing these grants and getting the funding. So, you know, Roberta has a big role here.
Right.
That's the connection of my being involved with the Healing Center as the grant writer for WJCS. And your comment about being vague and not really knowing what the Healing Center was very true for us at the onset when we first began to explore what we wanted to do as a healing center. We started talking about the doing before we were ready to really understand what it was that we were talking about. We had to take a step back and actually sit down and develop a definition, which we did. And if I may, that definition is healing center is a collection of programs and services that promote the spiritual, physical, mental, and general well-being of a particular group. And in this case, what we're talking about is a Jewish healing center, so it's the Jewish community whose health we are working towards promoting. And we do that by infusing all of the programs, or the hope will be to infuse all of the programs with the intrinsic power of Judaism through the tradition, through the history, through the teachings. We have a very rich background, and we hope to bring all of that background into all of the programs that the center will be able to provide.
Why would an agency, a community agency, seek to do this as opposed to having healing services available through a synagogue or through a JCC?
It's interesting. It's the rabbis and the synagogues that approached us and asked us to take the lead in this. They are collaborators with us on this program, but they asked us to do it.
What do you feel the benefit is of putting it in a community agency?
Well, I think there's a certain amount of expertise that comes from a community agency in developing programs and running programs that is not part of what synagogue and synagogue community life would normally be. And it would be very difficult for a synagogue to bring in a program that would be expansive enough to serve the entire county. They may want to serve just their community and just their congregation, but for it to be county-wide, it really needs to be from an entity that represents the entire county, and that's Westchester Jewish Community Services.
And I would think also in terms of looking at the whole person, it may be that as well.
Absolutely.
That you're not necessarily just looking at the spiritual aspect, you're looking at mental health and emotional needs that can also be the subject of healing.
Right, and looking at those from a perspective of infusing them with Judaism. It's not to say that someone would not be benefited by a secular mental health program or support group or class, but the services and the programs that the Jewish Healing Center will provide will be infused with a Jewish component, and that will be the difference.
Obviously, in order to do that, let me backstep a little bit. What is healing supposed to comprise? What do you anticipate people will seek? Who are the people who come?
I think that the primary impetus will be people who are experiencing some kind of loss and will require to be looking for some kind of relief from the feelings of loss, whether it's the loss of a job or the loss of a loved one or the loss of identity or the loss of spirituality. The Healing Center will be a place where someone can come and explore those feelings and receive programs and services that will address feelings of loss. In addition to that, though, people can come to the Healing Center looking for fulfillment and looking for expansion. It will be a place where people can come and learn more about themselves as well.
Mm-hmm. And Anne, I think you had drawn a distinction between healing and curing. This is not like a medical center where we're planning to cure people.
No, because people will be hopefully healed. Everyone who comes is not sick. I mean, we mentioned September 11th before. Somebody could come and they still have fears. They're still afraid to go into New York City. They're still afraid to get on an airplane. That's normal now. But they can come to the Healing Center and talk about it and maybe walk away feeling a little bit stronger. Somebody loses a job. They're not physically ill, but they're going through a trauma in their life, and hopefully being at the center and being in some kind of support group can make them feel better about it and heal them in that way. So it's emotional healing.
It could be someone in the process of a divorce or anything of that sort. Okay. You have a program that is the initial offering of this potential healing center.
We did.
Maybe you want to talk a little bit about that.
Absolutely. We spent some time in the first year of working on the Healing Center doing a lot of exploration and a lot of asking the community, are you interested? Would you support? What kind of services would you like? And we finally got to the point where it became time to actually go out and do something and provide some programming. Our hope in the future is that there will be 3 components to the Healing Center, that the Healing Center will offer spiritual components, will offer support components, and will offer educative components. It's in that educative space that we're going to begin. And we will begin with a series of workshops over the course of a 4-week period in the late fall on a variety of different topics that a lot of people who had discussed the need for the Healing Center came together and decided that these would be universal enough that people would be interested in them and would draw enough participation that we would be able to not only provide something to the community but educate the community about the idea of the Healing Center. So we will begin on November 7th with a workshop that's entitled A Jewish Perspective on Death and Dying. And that workshop will be presented by Rabbi Shira Milgram from Congregation Colmy in White Plains. The week after that, on November 13th, we will present a Jewish perspective on helping families deal with chronic illness. And that workshop will be presented by Dr. Herbert Nyberg from the Four Winds Hospital. That workshop is going to be followed on November 21st by a very exciting and interesting workshop by Rabbi Michael Paley from UJA Federation on Kabbalah and Jewish mysticism. And I think that that will be a particularly exciting one. And finally, because of the world that we live in, we decided that it would be important to talk about how how people can be helped when they have loved ones in family members living in countries in crisis, such as Israel or Argentina. And Rabbi Gordon Tucker from Temple Israel Center in White Plains will be presenting that workshop.
So these are very comprehensive. They touch on different topics. Do people need to attend all 4? Can they come
Absolutely
for
not.
one?
You can pick and choose. We would be delighted to have people attend all 4, and if they do, there is a slight discount for that. The workshops are $10 each, or attend all 4 for $36. If someone is interested, I would be the person to contact, but we will have flyers and brochures all over the county, hopefully.
Right.
So
All right.
everyone will
Well,
know
I'll let
about
you
them.
give that telephone number as we conclude this session. What role, obviously some rabbis are going to be presenting here, but what role will the rabbis play in developing and ensuring the ongoing Jewish infusion into the healing processes?
Well, obviously, it's because of our collaborations with all the synagogues and the rabbis that this came about, and that these are participants in these workshops. The rabbis will be advisory and participatory because they will help us when we're planning programs and also be involved in them as an active participant when they're needed for some kind of pastoral role.
Right.
And to give the Healing Center the Jewish perspective
And to bring the Jewish perspective into the program, if I give an example, we plan on offering different kinds of support groups down the line. And what would make a support group at a Jewish Healing Center different from a support group in any other organization? And what the difference will be is that we will absolutely have God as a participant in the support group, and the clergy that participates with us, that co-leads the group, will take on the responsibility of making sure that people are comfortable in bringing the spiritual component into the group and talking about their feelings with the spiritual entity as part of the healing process.
We had also talked about how, and I'm not sure whether this falls into the Healing Center or falls into the end-of-life care and bereavement process, how we were going to help communities develop what some synagogues have as caring community, home visitors, people who will go out and help others heal, either from the experience of loss or the experience of dealing with illness or some other kinds of trauma. How are you planning or thinking about instituting that?
Several of the congregations have indicated an interest in creating a caring community. Some of the congregations already have very successful caring communities already up and running. And what we'd like to do is provide support and training for the congregations who seek to set up a caring community. And caring communities do everything from transporting people for treatment, babysitting, cooking, providing compassionate comfort, making a hospital visit, doing errands and making phone calls. There's a whole group of services that a caring community can provide. People have wonderful ideas and a lot of spirit, but sometimes there's a little bit of discomfort in initiating a phone call, initiating a visit. And so what we can do is help people anticipate what the needs might be of the person who they're visiting. We can help them develop a dialogue that they're comfortable with. We can help them with skills about how to make a visit, how to make a phone call, how to provide all of the comfort without it being a burden either for themselves or for the family as well, because what you want to do is you want to come in and provide something nice and
you don't want them to feel that they have to take care of you.
Exactly,
Right.
exactly. So what we're doing is we're helping congregations develop caring communities, and we're providing training. And that could be role-playing, it could be all kinds of little model situations where people can practice and become more comfortable.
Okay. Well, we certainly have a lot of services going on under this rubric, and I think it will be very exciting to see the Healing Center up and running. Sherry, we have 3 minutes left. I want to hear a little bit about the 9/11 counseling and where it is now and what we're still providing for people who have been traumatized or who have gone through experiences related to September 11th.
Yeah. We continue to provide ongoing services to individuals and families who have been affected by 9/11, and that is not only where there has been an actual death, but people who have been affected by losing income, losing jobs, losing their homes as a result of having to move out of New York. And so again, in partnership with UJA Federation, we were set up as an agency who would be working with families in Westchester County who were referred to us by Safe Horizons and others as well. And so starting in right after 9/11 last year, we began receiving calls from people who were seeking services. The services range from people who were looking to access benefits, monies that were available to them, to people who needed counseling, people who had post-traumatic stress disorder, people who had fears as a result of the concerns around Indian Point. And we have been ongoing seeing people on a daily basis. We open up a case, we do a needs assessment, we are trying to find all of the benefits that they are entitled to. And as you know, when you read the papers, things change every day.
Every day,
So
right.
what was true yesterday is no longer true today. So we have to keep on top of that. We have endless trainings and all kinds of information that come to us, and our job is to transmit that to the individuals and help them to access all of the support and all of the benefits that they are available to. And keeping in mind that each of these people are individuals who come to this horrendous event with their own set of
Needs
life
and
circumstances, so we help them sort that out in relation to where they are today and where they hope to be in the future.
Okay. I just want to make people aware that as part of Project Liberty, which is one of the funding sources for agencies working with 9/11, WJCS will be offering a program on adolescence, a turbulent time in turbulent times. And that program will take place on November 14th with an expert on adolescence and child welfare and health, Alvin Poussant, who's a doctor from Boston. So if people are interested in that, they can give us a call at 761-0600, extension 205, and we'll give you further information. And I want to thank all three of you and give Roberta a chance to give your number for the Healing Center workshops, which begin in November as well.
Right, the first one on November 7th, and if anyone is interested in more information, please call me at 761-0600, and my extension is 227.
And Sherry, you want to let people know how they can get to you?
Yes, 949-7699, extension 367. And you can also call Lily Singer at extension 366.
Okay. And Ann?
Any information on Jewish programming, 761-0600, extension 208.
Okay, thank you all for sharing your thoughts, and we look forward to more exciting programs in the Jewish programming and in the Healing Center. I want people also to be aware that we will be beginning an endowment campaign to support our Jewish programming efforts. And on March 8th, 2003, we will be holding a gala event, and you're all invited, not entitled, invited to attend. We hope that we'll hear from you, and good night.